Hello, everyone there that's a part of the Project Open Mic audience. Thank you for listening into another Andre's Mic discussion. And this one's coming a little bit sooner than I was planning because I was going to do more discussions, and I had a couple that I hadn't actually uploaded, which I will be doing sometime in the near future. But this whole George Floyd situation has led to the rioting and things that are happening. Now, while I personally don't think that riots are the top way to go when it comes to protesting a situation, it is a possible result, especially if a large enough group of people feel that they have been ignored and that the things that they have talked about and cried out about have been disregarded. It happens. I don't think that that's the best method, but sometimes it's that type of response that gets things to happen or gets people to listen. Now, granted, I wish that the riots didn't happen, and I do believe, again, that I've heard that the protests for George Floyd started off peacefully, and it didn't become a riot until people started getting tear gassed. And even then, like with the Target, there were people who were actually trying to just go into the Target to purchase the milk, purchase milk to, splash across the eyes to help with the tear gassing. And it was that the Target told them, no, you can't come in here and purchase anything. We won't do business with you. And that may have led to why that Target got burned down. I don't know for certain because I'm not there. It's just what I have heard. The officer in the case is being charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. Now, I know why they can't do first-degree murder, because first-degree murder would imply that this was a premeditated act. I don't think it was premeditated. I do think it was highly stupid of the officer to do things the way he did, and for the other officers to just comply with him, especially when we come to find out now that there are documents, the documents for the charges. The other two officers that were laying on this man's body had asked several times, or at least a couple times, if they should turn him over and to keep him from, suffocating, allowing him to breathe. And it was the veteran officer's choice to not do that. I feel it's unfortunate for the other two officers that they complied with him. If I was one of them in that position, I'd be like, look, we can't do this. We need to turn this man over now before he dies under us. And you can tell that that was probably on their minds. And it's not fair that when someone, because they are affiliated with law enforcement, that they get a chance to, walk away from the scene of something that they did wrong and not be arrested for it and not be drawn up on charges. But at the same time, also understand that it's this weird dichotomy where you can't have an officer of a department just being arrested by other members of that same department. You would need a different law enforcement firm to come in to do that. At least that's what makes sense to me. You need a different branch of law enforcement to come in and do that. Again, I don't agree with the rioting and I don't agree with the looting. But I understand why it's happening. I especially don't agree with the looting because, it's different for people to have, protesters that they're taking milk to potentially save their vision from being blinded. I get that. But other people running in stealing electronics and other things that have nothing to do with the protest, I don't personally agree with that. I understand that's going to happen, and there are some people who are going to see the situation as, oh, how can I go ahead and snatch me up a couple other things since all this is going on? There are opportunists out there that make the rest of it look horrible when there are really people that are just doing it because they are pained. There's always nuance to a situation that has to be explored, and it's not always just cut and dry. But the unfortunate thing is, with the looting, the rioting and looting, there are people who would be otherwise sympathetic to what's going on that will turn a blind eye now because they're like, well, look at what they're doing. They shouldn't be doing that. The problem with that thought process is you're turning a blind eye to people who are angry because when they've tried peaceful methods, things didn't get done. They've tried having marches and protests without weapons, without walking around people's neighborhoods with guns drawn, without yelling and screaming and belittling people. They have been largely ignored. Hell, this country was founded on people rioting and protesting. And yet, again, I don't necessarily agree with the method, but it has worked before. It has done things. And when people are left to their own devices and they don't feel like they have any other reprieve, they're going to eventually become violent. It's Unfortunately, it's human nature. It's not necessarily about the color of the skin of the people. It's that they have literally been ignored. I would be all for a peaceful protest and for people listening and talking and discussing issues and hashing things out in a way that makes it easier on everyone. I'm all for that. I would love for that to happen. But it just hasn't worked. It hasn't worked because many times the message gets ignored. Just like with the Black Lives Matter movement. That started because there was a disparity in things that people were seeing. Or at least that's what it was portrayed as openly on the news. And then even sometimes the news would ignore certain stories. Or they would be kind of talked about as a side point where it was just kind of offhanded. And people took notice of that. Am I saying it's always the case? No. But it has often been the case. And honestly, I'll say it now. I even think that the reverse is happening, where maybe there are some situations where a Caucasian person has been killed and it's been passed on as a side point. Problem is with the news, drama is what gets the clicks. It's what sells. It's what gets the viewership. That's why whenever there has been like a mass shooting, it's been almost portrayed as hero worship the way they've covered it. It's frankly disgusting to me that they would cover it in that manner, but that's usually how it's been covered. You get into the person's past and talk about how good of a child they were and how helpful they were, how nice they used to be. That stuff doesn't need to come out about somebody who's murdered a lot of people. Because one, for those who may feel similar to that person, they'll see this as a way of getting recognition. It's been talked about before. Like I don't remember who it was that did the video discussing it. Way back, it may have been Total Biscuit because it was years ago that I saw it, and I know it was a documentary. I just can't remember who it was that did it. But long story short, that became hero worship in a weird sense. And I'm like looking at how the news portrays many different events. It becomes It's disturbing. It really is disturbing. That's why independent news organizations have started to crop up more over the years, because there aren't people that are just telling the actual story of what's happening. Or there haven't been when it comes down to the major news networks, because a lot of them have a particular political leaning. That should never be the reason that a story doesn't just get portrayed the way it should be portrayed, so that people can get the facts of the situation. There's a difference between giving your opinion on a situation, is what I am doing now, and portraying a situation in a light that best favors what your political leaning likes. And heck, even to that point, there was a reporter and a cameraman from CNN, I believe, that got arrested while they were doing as the police had told them they could do when it came down to reporting on the situation. Now, I don't know why they were arrested. I really have no understanding as to why they were arrested. To me, it makes no sense, especially if they were doing as the police had told them to do, or as the police said was okay to do. I have no understanding of that. It clearly boggles the hell out of my mind. Now, the thing I'm sitting here thinking about is that there were so many simple things that could have saved this man's life. And for anybody who would say, well, why didn't anybody stop them? Unfortunately, with the way the laws work, especially from what I've heard of what the laws are in Minnesota, any bystander could not do anything because they were police officers. Because they were clearly in uniform and they were acting in duty, and it was basically everybody knew who they were. They knew what their purpose there. I mean, they didn't know specifically what their purpose there was, but they knew they were in the middle of an act of law enforcement. Now, that act of law enforcement was horribly done. It was horribly performed, but they were in an act of law enforcement. Unfortunately, anyone who intervened looked at the possibility of getting shot, for one, or harmed in some other way, and also the potential of going to jail for trying to save a man's life from a police officer with a hefty number of things that could have been thrown at him. That's why no one was able to touch them. That's why no one could stop them, even though they literally were right there and watched the act happen. They couldn't do anything that wouldn't harm themselves in any way, shape, or form. And to me, that's a whew, that is a horrible, horrible situation to have to be stuck in, where you want to be able to act and try to save someone's life, but you can't. And you know you could if you could just act. I mean, yeah, they could have acted. They legitimately could have acted. But anyone that would have been subject to any number of different things that just worked against everyone. And that's unfortunate. I mean, yeah, sure, the whole crowd could have bum rushed him and got him off of him, and he would probably still be alive today. every one of those people would probably suffer very steep consequences for it, even if they're in the right. So yeah, leading this all back around, I understand why the riots are happening. I don't necessarily agree with that method, but I understand exactly why they're happening. It's it sucks. I I would personally never wish that this type of thing has to happen to anyone. I really personally would not wish this on anybody. And and come to find out, it was for a potentially forged $20 bill. Who's to say that George Floyd even knew that the 20 that he had on him was a forgery if it was? Who's to say it was even him that gave the $20 in the store? Like, and come to find out also that the two rookie officers, one of them actually pulled their gun on this man for no reason. He couldn't see his hands. You know, a reasonable response to not being able to see someone's hands when you are, coming up to them for an alleged crime, just ask them to put their hands where you can see them. You don't necessarily have to pull a gun on this person, especially if they haven't been acting in an erratic manner. So there was already a high level of tension in the situation that was created by the pulling of that firearm. So all around, it was just this unfair treatment of this situation that was a potential nonviolent crime. We don't even know if he actually committed a crime. We have a potential crime for $20 that this man's life was lost. $20. To me personally, no amount of money is worth killing someone over. It's not the money that would be worth killing over. But this is like someone could work for an hour or two and make that amount of money. Heck, you could potentially walk down the street and find a $20 bill on the road. I know I've done it before. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And that's what has people so angry and so frustrated and so fed up. I get it. I understand fully. And I'm never going to be agitated at people for having an emotional response to something. Now, I will be agitated at the people that are taking this as an opportunity to steal and loot things that have nothing to do with protesting the murder of this man. But they're blended in with the people who are actively just trying to protest an injustice that they've seen. So it's one of those situations where you can either punish some of them or all of them. I mean, none of them or all of them. I didn't say that means some. I would prefer the punishment for the some actually happen. It's just, it's a hard situation to navigate for anybody. Because even if This isn't an issue about race. It's become a racial issue because of how many times similar events have happened. And it's just one of those things where it's like, it's just bad all around. I don't want to see people out of their jobs or having their businesses destroyed. I don't want to see people's livelihoods be wrecked. But I fully just get why this type of thing is happening. There are a lot of people who feel hurt by this, and there are a lot of people who are recognizing, like, this could have been any one of us. This could have been any one of us that this happened with. And for the record, the rioters are not all black people. There are people of many different creeds and colors rioting. It's not just black people. And even still, there are people, again, of multiple different creeds and colors that are going back and cleaning up these communities and trying to fix things after this stuff happens. So I commend them on that. But there are a lot of things that just happen, and it just like it really this is soul crushing. That this man was crying for help, and no one could help him, and he knew he was going to die. Heck, even the officers that were there knew he was going to die, seemingly. But yeah, just because you can breathe doesn't mean that you can put your knee on somebody's throat. Being able to get air out is not the same thing as being able to get air in. And it hurts you as a if you're a person who's empathetic and caring, it hurts you to hear these types of things happen. It kills you inside to hear these types of things have happened. Because you don't want this for anyone. And yeah, I do feel like all of the officers involved should be punished. While at this point, all of the ex-officers involved should be punished. Not just the guy who had his knee down on the man, but the other officers who complied and helped with this situation, who was basically assisted in the death of this man. The officer that is least credible in the charge is the one that was maintaining the crowd. But he still played a part. He still played a part in what happened to this man. And again, this is over $20. $20 that was an easy thing to rectify, easy situation to deal with. Like, hey, oh yeah, and it was also said in the report for the charges that George Floyd kind of went stiff and fell down to the ground, and he didn't want to get in the cruiser because he's claustrophobic. You know what? At that point, he's not moving anywhere. He's not able to get away. He's not fighting to get away from you. At best, you keep one officer with him to keep him from moving until you can get Either one, a bigger vehicle to put him in, or two, go the group method, try to get him in the back of the cruiser. If that fails, then again, go back to getting someone with a bigger vehicle. Call for that type of assistance because that was an option. But keep one man on him to keep him down. And I don't believe they searched his person or the car he was in, which they should have, as well as the two people that were with him. That would have been proper procedure, would be to search them to make sure that they're not just running around with counterfeit bills. Who's to say that they didn't, like, who's to say he didn't end up with a counterfeit bill on accident? Like, hey, he could have been purchasing something from somebody, or he could have sold something to someone, and they may not have known that they had a counterfeit bill and handed it to him. Again, that's if it was even a counterfeit bill. That's the literal thing. That's if it was a counterfeit bill. We don't know. We have nothing for certain that says that's exactly what happened. Anyone could have been walking around with counterfeit money on them and not knowing that they had counterfeit money. It happens sometimes. It's there are so many things that could be said about this, and I feel like I may not be stating this the proper way, and I'm trying to with every avenue of thought that I go down. But in the long run, I feel like the rioting happened because people have tried peaceful protests, and even in this situation, from what I hear, the protests started off peacefully. People were tear gassed. What do you think is going to happen if you have a peaceful protest and you start tear gassing everyone? And then when they try to go get relief, the place that they could get the relief from says, no, we're not selling you anything. It was a pressure valve that popped. It literally was. It was a pressure valve that built up and built up and built up and built up, and it just popped. That's why these types of situations happen. It's never for no reason. There's never a non-existent reason to a riot. There never is. Riots happen because something pushed it to happen. Whether you agree with it happening or not. It happens because of a pressure valve release. For example, say you had a soda and you shook that bottle up as much as you could, got all of the carbon dioxide in it to bubble up, and you put that bottle down and you stomp on it with all the force that you can. You can make that bottle explode. You are capable of making that bottle explode. It can happen. Oddly enough, I have a feeling that somebody will hear that and they will try that experiment out. And I can tell you, it is something you can do. I know because I've done it before as a teenager. But that being said, I really do hope that justice is served for George Floyd. I actually hope that justice is served for a lot of people where they and their lives taken in an unneeded manner. Unfortunately, I just don't know about all of those situations. There's nothing I can say to all of those situations. I can only talk about the ones that come up and are known. Or even my own personal situations if it ever gets down to that. But in the long run, I never want to see things like this happen. And I would really, really hope that justice is served for this man in the proper manner. I would hope that for anyone that had something like this happen to them. And again, me saying that is not based on race. Even though I am of the same race as the man that was murdered. That's not the reason why I'm talking about it. The reason I'm talking about it is because this is something I'm aware of, and these are my thoughts on it. And I would love for everyone to be able to peacefully protest, but you can't tell people to peacefully protest and then ignore them when they do. Oh, you guys should be protesting peacefully. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be letting your anger take hold of you. Unfortunately, again, many times that doesn't work, even when people do it. It just doesn't work. And I don't know if that's necessarily a societal or a political thing, but I know there are often times where it's ignored. And this is the result of it. But I don't really have a whole lot more to say on this. I think I've covered everything I really can with it. I mean, until like more information comes out, there's not much more I can say on it. But thank you for listening. I know this was very long-winded, and it's just one of those things that really, again, is soul-crushing and it sucks. But I hope that everybody who's listened got something out of this. Thank you very much for giving your time, and hopefully try your best to enjoy your life. Okay, people. So that was supposed to be the end of this discussion, and I was listening in to a discussion about the George Floyd case, and someone had commented in that something very similar had happened to someone in Dallas. It was actually a white male who was 32 years old at the time. His name was Tony Tempa. And this is another situation where the officers killed this man. They were given leave of absence, I assume. I mean, I haven't fully gone through the report. I haven't fully gone through the report on this. But if you look up Dallas Morning News, Tony Tempa, you'll find the report that I'm currently reading. This man was basically held down by officers, pinned down by officers for quite a while, and he had been screaming for help for a while. And he even told the officers repeatedly, "You're going to kill me." And he fell unconscious. The officers that were pinning him down were making jokes about waking him up for breakfast and for school. It's ridiculous that this type of thing happens. But I'm just going to make it a point to say this. Just like people are outraged about the stuff with George Floyd, people should be outraged about this. And these sorts of things need to stop happening. One way or the other, these sorts of things need to stop happening. And if it's going to keep happening, we're all going to be in a much crappier situation where the officers can kill somebody, they can take a person's life, and then they can be put on suspension for a little while and then go right back to work. These officers, again, this is another situation where officers killed the man. And I think the only footage that is available is the body cam footage from the police officers. I think the main difference, besides the fact that George is black and Tony Temple was white, the main difference is there isn't so much, or at least from what I'm seeing so far, there isn't as much public. It wasn't as seen by the public. That's where I'm looking at. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm still reading through this. But it would look like, if my phone would stall while I'm trying to read this and record at the same time. It's not that the phone itself stalled, it's that the website kind of stopped. I'm going to try to get it back up in a second. I really don't want this to be happening to anyone. And just personally, I feel like if officers are going to be doing stuff like this, they should be punished for it. And unfortunately, it seems like it just seems like all police officers tend to get away with this a lot. Let's see, wailed and pleaded for help more than 30 times. Like, this happened back in 2016, so this was close to 4 years ago. And I think it happened during that summer. Oh, August 10th of 2016. Okay. So, sorry, throat's a little dry. Temple called 911 on August 10th, 2016 from a parking lot of a Dallas porn store saying he was afraid and needed help. He told the dispatcher he suffered from schizophrenia and depression and was off his prescription medication. Okay, and this wasn't even reported until 2017 for news. That's horrible. The news first reported Tempe's death in a 2017 investigation that showed Dallas police refused to say how a man who called 911 for help ended up dead. Yeah, so this is a very different situation. This man was actually calling the police for help. That makes it even worse. And why send police officers without sending an ambulance with them, or sending firefighters as EMTs with them? The man clearly knew he was having an issue, and he called for help and got killed. The newly obtained video and records part of a lawsuit filed by Tempe's family in federal court alleging excessive force contradict key claims Dallas police have made in defending the officer's actions. Police incident reports recounting the officer's version of events claim Tempe's behavior that night was aggressive and combative. He also called looking for help and said he's schizophrenic and he has depression. If he was having an episode at that moment in time, after clearly having stated on the phone that he needed help and he knew something was wrong with him or with himself, that shouldn't have happened. The video shows Temple writhing at times and clearly struggling to breathe, asking officers to stop pinning him down. On a custodial death report submitted to the state in 2016, the department answered no to questions about whether Temple resisted arrest, threatened, or fought officers, which he didn't. Police had previously claimed to use only enough force necessary to block Temple from rolling into a busy section of Mockingbird Lane. In the first minute, Temple rolls around near the curb, but the video shows the police car clearly blocks traffic about a minute later near the bus bench where the officers had pinned him. Several officers continue pressing his restrained body into the ground. He had already been handcuffed by a private security guard before police arrived. He never threatens to hurt or kill the police. The footage also shows the officers mocking Temple as he struggled to live. Shortly after, one officer ridicules Temple's repeated cries for help. An officer notes that he appears to be out cold. They joke that he's merely asleep and try to wake him. It's time for school, wake up. One officer mimics the teen saying, "I don't want to go to school. 5 more minutes, Mom." They joke about buying him new shoes for the first day of school and making him a special breakfast, laughing loudly. It's unclear from the video why Dallas First Fire Rescue medical responders don't intervene immediately after Temple loses consciousness. Oh, so they were on the scene. "I was unable to assess the patient due to his combativeness," said one of the first responders in a newly obtained affidavit. However, the medical responders appeared to take Temple's blood pressure while he is still unconscious about 5 minutes before administering Versed, a powerful sedative. By the time the paramedic gives Temple the sedative, officers are already questioning if Temple is awake. There's more to this article. I don't really want to read the rest. Just because this is horrible. But again, this is a situation where people are being killed by the police in situations where they shouldn't be. Then it's swept under the rug and officers aren't getting punished. In George Floyd's case, there was much more of a public outcry. And it's ridiculous. This just shouldn't be happening. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to stop with the recording here because this is bothering me more than I thought it would. That it's just people are going to be, if this happens and things go the way that if things proceed down the path that I am fearing that they will go, and Trump does introduce a police state, we're all screwed. We are all screwed. Because once you start turning the military on its own citizens, you are asking for a war. Nobody needs that. Nobody truly wants that. But that's a path I'm worried that we're going down. But that's it for me. I don't really have anything else to really throw in on this or say about it. That's it.